Hi Claire, I'm Sarah from The Upcoming. Such a pleasure to meet you. So maybe you could kick off with a brief introduction to this incredible documentary. What can people expect if they watch it?
I'm Claire Sturgess, and I'm currently an absolute radio presenter, but back in the mid-90s, a long time ago, 25 years ago, I was leaving Radio 1 to join this fledgling radio station called XFM, and this is the story of how XFM came to be.
And it's really interesting because obviously it is about a specific radio station, but it also feels like a bit of a time capsule and like going back in time, remembering like how music was in that era and everything else that was going on in pop culture. Of course, the fate of Princess Diana, just the day it was launching. So what do you think was so special about going back and revisiting this period of time?
It's a really interesting question, and I think that the producers sort of said to me the whole XFM launched, well, the RSLs, the restricted licenses that they got in the early 90s, launched at such a special, exciting time for British indie music. They were right at the centre of it. And when they finally got their licence, it was at the height of britpop. So they really sort of did hit the jackpot at that time. It might have been actually slightly going down at the time. So yeah, it really represented what was so great about Cool Britannia. What I love about the story is the fact that it's one man's vision. It was his love of music that he wasn't hearing regularly on other radio stations. His determination to get it out there as a radio station. He started as a radio pirate and then thought, no, I want to do this legitimately. And after spending many hours and many days on top of skyscraper roofs and getting drenched and electrocuted and caught fire on, he finally got the licence and met some like-minded radio geeks and music fans along the way. So it's really sort of a story of his determination to make a radio station. And I think that's something that you just couldn't do today. So it really was of its time. That's what you could do in the 90s. And I don't think you could do that today. Unless someone wants to prove me wrong. Maybe they could. I don't know. It'd be great if they did.
And all the great faces that you see, and people like Ricky Gervais and Stephen Merchant, also the Libertines. So, isn't it kind of exciting thinking, you feel a sense of nostalgia perhaps, when things could just sort of happen in this grassroots way?
No, definitely. And what's interesting, the Libertines were very keen to be involved because, of course, they weren't the Libertines back in the day when they were just like, they were just starting. They wanted their band to be played on XFM, so they were very keen to be part of it because they were our listeners. They were able to tell us how exciting it was for them as a new up-and-coming band to be played on XFM alongside David Bowie and Robert Smith and all these icons. But yeah, the presenters on the station, we had a lot of music journalists who, of course, just brought their wealth of knowledge. People like Keith Cameron, who's going to be here tonight. He was very close with Nirvana, so he was bringing all these contacts in. And these guys like Ricky Gervais and Stephen Merchant, who at the time were fans of music and were brought in by Sammy to be head of speech. But Sammy must have seen that there was something there, and he unleashed the stardom on them. So yeah, and it's great. Sadly, Ricky can't be here tonight, but he's here in spirit and he's seen the film and he loves it too. And you'll see what he thinks, obviously, what he says about XFM in the film.
And I can't go without asking you about being kind of perhaps a bit of a lone female voice. And do you look back at that time now? And obviously the landscape has changed. Still doesn't seem like it's a complete level playing field, but do you see that we've made progress? Is there still progress to be made in terms of that gender equality?
There's always progress to be made in gender equality, but I think we are making progress. It was quite a shock, I think, when you look back. Few of us there were. Marianne Hobbs, for example, the late Janice Long. But yeah, progress is being made, but it's slow. And I think it's because, I don't know what the answer is, but we just have to, I just keep shouting loud about it and saying, yeah, get involved. Maybe not with radio, but, with finding your voice. It's about finding your voice and grabbing a microphone and just speaking out. But yeah, it's slow. We are getting there.
And finally, what do you hope people take away from watching the documentary? And I guess looking back, people might have said that radio would die out by now, and it hasn't. It's got such longevity. So is that also, kind of a message of the film?
I hope radio has longevity. I mean, I still work in radio and still love it, and we still have a lot of listeners who love it, so I hope it continues. I hope people take away from the film, if they were there at the time as an XFM listener, they will get a massive dose of nostalgia and will love it. If they weren't there at the time but remember the 90s well, they will also enjoy it. And I hope people who weren't there at the time, who maybe are too young to remember the 90s, will go, wow, that looked really good fun. I hope they don't think it's loads of middle-aged folk just going, oh, the 90s were great, you know, because they were. But I hope that they can see that, you know, we sort of, you know, laid the groundwork for a lot of bands, and I think XFM laid the groundwork for a lot of good radio that's still going strong today. So I just hope people enjoy it with a smile.
And you can be a great example of how, I guess, other women shouldn't feel intimidated that it is a boys' club. Maybe it did feel a bit like one back then, particularly in alternative music, but it doesn't have to be that way.
Exactly. When I worked previous to XFM, I was at Radio 1. I remember I was just so intimidated by everything. I bought a book called, I forget who it's by, it's called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. Someone caught me reading it and laughed out loud because they said, but you're one of the gutsiest, ballsiest, mouthiest people we knew. And I thought, that's funny, that's how I came across. But inside, I was just dying every day thinking, I can't do this. So it's all about fronting it. My front was out there, but inside I was like, oh, I can't do this. But they thought I could. So, yeah, fake it. Fake it till you eventually make it.
Fantastic. It was lovely to speak to you. Enjoy the evening. Thank you so much.